Hi, Mary Vogue here. I'm going to talk today specifically about an experience that I got to participate in and really enjoy towards the end of 2023 that I just want to share about that experience with you. So I got to go overseas with a missions organization that I'm very familiar with to teach English in Papua New Guinea. Now, what you need to understand is this was really important to me because I'm a missionary kid and I got to grow up in Papua New Guinea. And so while I've known for a young age that I wanted to be a teacher, missions has always been such an important part of who I am and what I want to do with my life as well. And so when I realized that I could combine my love for teaching with my love for missions and use my teaching as a ministry, which you can do in the States, but I also could do overseas, I just got really excited. And I got pulled off the field. I got pulled away from Papua New Guinea earlier than my family had expected. And that affected me because I was a child. I was 12, so I was old enough to understand what was going on. But I was also young enough and had lived there long enough that I didn't know how the world worked apart from that. It was like the only home I knew at that point. I couldn't imagine a life where I was not in Papua New Guinea. And so years had passed between me getting pulled off the field thinking I was never going to get to go back. And I was able to go into college pursuing this as what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I knew that if I could, if the Lord willed, I wanted to go back to Papua New Guinea and teach at the same school that I was educated in. I left in like the middle of my 7th grade year, and the way that this school operated is very similar to American schools in the fact that you would have one teacher that can teach middle school and maybe also some high school classes because there's a small enough school. And so the teacher I got for a very short amount of time in 7th grade got to be the teacher that helped me student teach when I went over there. And so for student teaching here in the States, you have to get 16 weeks of student teaching done. My state that I am certified in specifically required 12 weeks, but my college required 16 weeks. So once I completed the 12 weeks of certification for state standards, I was able to use those remaining 4 weeks, and we planned on me getting to go overseas. Now, there are a whole bunch of stories related to that whole process that I'd love to share with you at some point. This is probably just not the time for that because this video could go on for hours. I journaled while I went, and I currently have about 37,000 words recorded, and there were definitely days where I wanted to record more, but I just recorded like the main ideas on paper. And so if it ever got fleshed out as a full story, I love journaling because it helps me remember and be able to relive the moments so I can look back and still learn from them. It might become a full novel. Probably won't, but there's potential for that. So the main point of this video is I want to share my goals I had going overseas and how I felt that they were accomplished, and then potentially some other things that I learned. So to start, my primary goal was to complete my student teaching for my college's requirements and to see whether it was a fit for me to go back in the future. And I would say that I was able to meet, I said one primary goal, but there was definitely two primary goals. I think that I was able to meet both of those goals, which was really exciting. So I have currently graduated with my degree, so yes, I was able to accomplish the student teaching aspect, which was the main point of me going there. But I also was able to talk to the principal and just work through what it looks like for me being able to go back full time in the future. And the answer that the principal gave me was not what I expected, but it has altered my plans for 2024. One of the reasons why I created the 2024 goals video, because what I was anticipating for November of 24 was going to look like, what I anticipated 2024 was going to look like in November of 2023, and what I anticipated 2024 was going to look like from December of 2023, in just a very short amount of time. All of my plans altered. It completely changed the way that I envisioned my future looking. So I was planning to go through a training course that this organization expects you to do before you go into full-time missions. But the answer that I had received was, instead of you focusing on the training course right now, we want you to get more experience teaching. And so I was able to go into the meeting preparing to explain all of the reasons why I would be a perfect fit, why I would love to be a teacher here, and why I understand that it would probably be a few years in the future before I could go, but I was already working on getting there. And I left realizing that there were still steps that we need to take before I could go over teaching full time, but they're not the steps that I anticipated taking. So now I get to look at teaching jobs here that pay so I can get experience before I go over there, instead of looking to pay to take a training course before I go over. The experience in this instance is more valuable than just taking another course. So that was, in some senses, disappointing to hear, but also in some senses very exciting to hear. I had multiple secondary goals as well, though. So I had those 2 primary goals. I would say I had about 4 secondary goals. So one of them was to heal my inner child, because I did leave when I was 12. I didn't know I was not coming back. There was potential for it. My parents told me we might come back, we might not. And I was an optimist then. And I was like, oh, it's great. I'm going to come back totally. Like, this is the only life I know. There's no other option. Of course I'm coming back. So just being able to go and heal that inner child, be able to relive some of those memories, and just acknowledge that it's okay that it's a part of my past, and it's okay that I didn't live there for as long as I had expected to. I also wanted to just experience the culture of Papua New Guinea again. The culture, the language, that was a really big part of just like being there, is just being in their culture. I don't think that Americans have it all right. I don't think we have it all figured out. And I think it's so much fun to learn and experience other cultures. And so I was very excited to go to Papua New Guinea and experience their culture again and learn their language again. I knew I was only there for a month, so you can't do everything in a month, but I wanted to just be immersed in that as much as I could. I also wanted to look for ministry opportunities. If I'm going over there as a teacher, yes, my teaching is a ministry, but I want to know ways that I can serve the community outside of just teaching. Teaching is an 8-hour job, Monday through Friday, for the most part. And yes, teachers have to lesson plan before and be able to respond and grade paperwork and interact with the students and the parents and meetings, and teaching can be much more than a 40 clock hour week. But I still felt like there is a need for me to be able to minister to the community outside of just teaching. And so one of my secondary goals was to look at if there were ministry opportunities that I could get plugged into, or if there were opportunities for me to create a new ministry that doesn't exist. My 4th goal was to experience life there as an adult missionary, instead of just as a missionary kid. Because when I was last there, I was still under my parents' roof. I did what they told me to. I didn't ask questions. And there was so much about the missions community and the Papua New Guinea culture that I didn't understand, because I was just doing what I was told to do. I was just living my own child life, selfish, focused on myself, not worrying about those other details. So getting to go there to experience the adult life, not just the missionary kid life. And I would say all 4 of those goals were accomplished as well, which was so exciting to see. I didn't need to have them all accomplished, but I had high standards for going to Papua New Guinea, and they were exceeded in every single way. So when it comes to learning the language and the culture, I realized that I understood what they were saying practically 100%. I'd say like maybe 95 to 98% of what they were saying. And they speak Melanesian Pidgin. So it's a Creole. It's very similar to English. My go-to explanation for this is if I say, "Morning, you stop, alright." That's me saying, "Good morning, how are you doing?" You stop, "How are you?" And then, "Alright, are you good?" And then morning is obviously good morning. You can say "Appy noon" is afternoon. Grass is hair. That always really interested me, but I guess like strands of hair are kind of like grass. Anyway, the language is close to English, but it's a mix of like English, German, a whole bunch of people from these different cultures that came to Papua New Guinea to colonize it. way forever ago. I could go a history lesson on it, don't want to right now. But it's close enough to English that in general, someone who speaks English could understand, I would say, 50 to 70% of what they were saying. But because I had spoken the language before, I was able to go in and understand 98% of what they were saying. Again, I probably couldn't have a conversation with someone and overhear another conversation and understand 98% of it. I have to have my full attention focused to understand about the conversation, but it was still just really exciting to get to relearn the language, to understand how much I already knew, and I could listen to other people talk. This was fun. There were some of the Papua New Guinea nationals there that understood English. Again, the languages are pretty close, but they understood English enough to a point that they could speak to me in Melanesian Pidgin, and I could speak back in English. And we could have a conversation going back and forth because we could understand what the other person was saying and respond in our native tongue. So it does not always work, and it's not always practical, but for the 1 month that I was there, that was really exciting. I also learned much more about the culture that I didn't understand, and I would love to get to experience more of that, but I only had so many opportunities within that 1 month time when my focus was on teaching as well. So that was goal number 1 of secondary goals that I feel like was amazing, a great experience. My number 3 goal was to understand how I can serve the community outside of teaching and understand what ministries already exist and consider what ministries I could create. And so there was a ministry that already exists that I got to get plugged into very quickly. They had Student Senate for the high schoolers, which was not required for teachers, and you're still working with the high schoolers and getting to serve and interact with them, but outside of school subject. And so I got plugged into that very quickly, especially because my cooperating teacher was a part of that, and I got to join into that. And it was so much fun. It was a blast for me. I got to connect with the students more, and it was definitely a ministry that I would love to get to plug into if I get to go back full time. I also realized how many ministry opportunities that I could help create or be a part of that don't currently exist. For example, there is no tutoring for the students. Sometimes they can talk to teachers after school for a certain amount of time, but I would love to be able to work one-on-one with certain students that are really struggling to help make sure that they're getting their homework done and understand the material that they're learning. The most important thing to me when it comes to ministry opportunities that I would love to create, and it was kind of disappointing to see that I didn't see it already there, but I'm also not surprised because it didn't exist when I was there, is I really, really, really want to start a mentorship opportunity, especially for the girls as a female, but for the missionary kid girls who are there, because Bible is such a part of the culture there. It's a Christian school, and so they have chapels every single Wednesday where they get to talk about the Bible more, and there are just so many opportunities for them to talk about the Bible in class, talk about the Bible outside of class. They have a Bible class that they have to take, and there's church on Sunday, and there's so many Bible aspects of their day-to-day and week-to-week life. But I want to help these girls realize that being a Christian is a personal choice, and it's a choice that you personally have to make to continue growing in. And I want Christianity and your relationship with Jesus Christ to be a personal, not a cultural. A personal experience, not a cultural experience. And so I just would love to take the opportunity to mentor these girls, hear what they're struggling with, because I was in their shoes, not always for the same length, because I never did any high school there. But I was in their shoes, I did make my own mistakes, and I did learn and grow from them, and just be able to help them in their individual walk with God, and help them understand why it's important to have that individual and personal experience instead of just making it cultural. The fourth thing that I was able to learn that I was surprised was getting to go over as a missionary adult, not as a missionary kid. So the biggest thing I remember was in their culture, from what I understand, the mission-based specific culture, so not Papua New Guinea culture, We live on a fenced-in base that has security walking around, so very much safe in that if someone isn't supposed to be on the base, they're not on the base. So I'm able to leave my door open if I want to. Most people shut and lock them anyway, because that's just the safe thing to do, and accidents do happen. But when I'm in my house, if I leave my actual door propped open and I have the screen door shut, that communicates. I am welcome to visitors. Please come over and talk to me. If I shut the door, even if I'm inside it, it looks like I'm gone, or it's communicating, please leave me alone. I was not aware of that until 2 weeks of my 4 weeks there. 2 weeks of my 4 weeks there. I am a very social person, and so it was very saddening for me to realize that I was communicating to people, I don't want to talk to you, for 2 weeks. Granted, it's not a huge deal because I definitely got out of the house every single day, and probably for the first week at least, I did need my space just to get settled in. But I'm just saddened by the opportunities I could have had to talk to people if I just left my door propped open. So I definitely started doing that. Not a very good example. There were definitely plenty more that I learned. But just things like that you don't think you need to teach your children, and then they figure out when they're there on their own. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but I think the one I'm missing is I wanted to heal my inner child. And so the way that I was able to do that was I talked to many missionaries who were there that were friends with my parents, and they've been there for years, and they have kids of their own, and I was just able to express the feelings that I was feeling and how I wanted to be able to heal my inner child and how I didn't want that to be my main reason to come, but it definitely was something that I couldn't ignore. And there were so many people that were able to come alongside and support me. I was able to walk around base and just take a whole bunch of pictures and take time to breathe and remember that things aren't the same, but that I can still enjoy the memories of the past. And I shouldn't have needed to be in the country to do that kind of healing, but it helped so much for me to just get to walk the same roads that I used to walk as a kid and acknowledge I'm not a kid anymore. I've changed, I've grown, these memories still exist, these memories are still important, but they're not what define me anymore. And I don't have to hold on to them as tightly as I think I was, even though I was trying to continually let it go. So that was another goal that I was able to accomplish that I was really excited about. So on top of these 2 primary goals and my 4 secondary goals, I learned how to survive on my own. I was not on my own because I had God on my side the whole time, which literally was a lifesaver in so many ways. I don't even know how many ways because he's protected me from things that I'll never know about. But I remember it was just my first time flying overseas by myself. That was a big deal. There were definitely moments where I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to be okay. But God took care of me. And while I was in the country, while I was on the base, I definitely had my cooperating teacher that I could go to with any concerns. And I had so many families that I knew from when I was there that are still there, which was so cool, that I knew I could go to any of them if I had questions or concerns. And I definitely did use those as resources. But this was my first time ever living in a house by myself, because I had just been in college where I was living in dorm rooms the whole time. And before college, I was living under my parents' roof. And so I got to make my own food. I got to buy my own food, make my own food, meal plan my own food, decide what to do with leftovers. I needed to monitor how I kept my house clean. I needed to make sure that I was on top of my own laundry. A lot of these things I knew how to take care of, and my mom always told me, you're an independent young woman. Like, since I was 17 years old, she could tell that I thrive living on my own. I thrive in independency. I love getting to take care of myself, which in a sense is part of human nature, because then I don't have to worry about other people telling me what to do. And it's surprising that I will allow myself to submit myself to Christ if I want to control everything of my life. But again, a conversation for another time. But I got to live by myself for a whole month, and I loved it. It definitely took work, but it was so much fun. So while I was there, my primary goal was teaching, as I mentioned. What I got to teach was 9th and 10th graders. I taught 9th and 10th grade English because my degree is in secondary English. And so they have 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th English, obviously, middle school and high school English. We currently have 2 English teachers, one who's teaching middle school, one who's teaching high school. But when I left, we had 1 English teacher who taught all 6 grades. So I got to take over 2 of the 4 that the high school English teacher was teaching. And the 9th graders were learning how to write a short story. So I got to go over like characterization and what is a plot arc and why is setting important in a story and are we going to focus on a theme. And I love writing. Writing is one of the reasons why I chose English, because I would have chosen a creative writing major, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And when I realized that I could choose teaching and writing at the same time because English is writing. So I loved English. I loved teaching 9th grade English. Those students also were just very energetic students. So there were 7 of them, again, very small class. I transitioned from teaching in the States at a 9th grade center that had like 400 9th graders total. And so I interacted with about 100 to 125 in the span of the day, to transitioning to a school where I taught 7 9th graders total. Very different, but it was still so much fun. I got to know each one of them on a much more personal relationship, and I got to personalize the class because there were 7 of them. And then for 10th grade, guess how many they were? 8. I hold up one hand. 8. So I had 7 9th graders, and then there were 8 10th graders. And 10th grade, we were going over the book To Kill a Mockingbird. And so they had already started that, and they had already written a short story, because 9th and 10th were doing the same thing, just flip-flopped. So 9th grade had already read To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were working on a short story. 10th grade had already done their short story and were working on To Kill a Mockingbird. And I read To Kill a Mockingbird in 11th grade honors class. I chose that book in 11th grade honors. So I am blown away that they're putting this in front of 10th graders and 9th graders, but I think it's great for them. And so To Kill a Mockingbird was a little more structured, and it was a little, like, there was planning work already done for me, whereas for the short story, I got to, like, pretty much write the whole plan of what I was teaching them. But I think it was still good. They really connected with certain chapters, and when I was able to explain information, that was really helpful for them. And it was just really fun to get to see some of the kids that I knew from grades younger than me in 10th grade, which was also concerning in some ways because there was levels of respect that some of them easily could have struggled with, and I think did struggle with, because in years previous, we would have been pretty good friends. There was just an age gap. And now we can't be friends. I'm their teacher. But it was a challenge that was easy to overcome because of where the students were coming from and how well they responded to the authority in their life and how well they understood the situation that they were placed in. So that was really cool to experience as well. So I think that's all I want to cover in this video. If you have any questions or want to hear more about a specific area, I'd love to let you know. Again, I've journaled about 37,000 words, so I definitely have more words that I could add to this if you care. So, thanks for listening. Bye.